Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wisdom Wednesday. This is a very non-quintessential Wisdom Wednesday today. I am here with Miss Tanisha Everett, who is going to be talking to me today about media narratives. That is one of the subjects that a lot of what we've been talking about on Wisdom Wednesday, these concepts like thought-terminating cliches or cognitive dissonance, has been leading up to. And many of these information theories contribute to overarching narratives that are told in media environments or information environments. There is a lot going on in the United States right now. We've had COVID. We are, I don't even want to say in the wake of, we're in the middle of a massive uprising, Black Lives Matter protests blowing up around the country. Statues have been torn down. This is a big shift in history, in US history right now. So it's important to talk about information theory and media narratives shaping this current history, shaping the information around COVID, shaping the information around Black Lives Matter, and also the way forward for the country. We are approaching an election in November that is quite uncertain at the moment. We're not even sure how polling places are going to be open right now. We're not sure about the security of mail-in ballots. So this is a precarious time. And it's time to be having these conversations while things are malleable so they can be reformed into more productive systems that facilitate diversity and connection and focus on building a better future.
I worked on the Obama campaign, the first one. So at the University of Houston, I was one of the co-founders of the Students for Barack Obama at the University of Houston. That's when I was doing my master's degree. And so I was kind of like the media person. And we actually got Michelle Obama to come speak to us at the university. But I knew when Obama won that first election that we were going to get that blowback. I knew he was going to be a president for 2 terms. And I knew that we were going to get I didn't know it was going to be Trump, but I knew we were going to get someone like Trump. Is this whole Trump is ruining the country narrative? It's because of Trump that we have racism. It's because of Trump that white nationalism is there. It's because of Trump, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, yo, this has been an issue in this country since the birth of the nation. What the hell are you talking about? But it's almost like they need to scapegoat Trump for all the ills that are happening in the country. So, which tells me that you're actually not wanting to deal with the issues. You just want to put the issues on someone. And that way, if you can defeat that person, then you can say, oh, look, we defeated the problem. No.
Yeah.
The issue is ingrained into the fabric of the country. It's the party of family values.
Yeah.
Yet they voted a man into office who's been married 3 times, have several children from different marriages, is known to be very misogynist, who's probably not even a Christian, by the way. And I'm just kind of like, So it's okay, so either you are for family values or you're not, right? Or they're the patriotic, here's the other one, the patriotic party, right? They look after the military. And then on the Democratic side, they're politically correct, they're liberals. Candace Owens says the Democratic plantation, that's what she calls it. So so they're the party of welfare. The Democratic Party is the friend to people of color.
Yeah, that's one of the ones I've seen. That narrative is huge, and I see that everywhere.
We're going to talk about liberal racism. So, which I got to experience because you and I are both from the South, right? So we understand racism from a different place. But then I lived in California, which is where we met, and I got to experience liberal racism. That was not fun. So they're anti the military. They're big government. That's the other one. And I'm one of those progressives that I personally side eye the Democratic Party, because to me, they don't get anything done. And I'm going to keep saying that. People get mad at me about it. Yes, they move a little bit of the needle, but the fact that the Republican Party can do more damage with not as much power than the Democrats can with a lot of power is very astonishing to me.
Speaking specifically of media narratives around the hashtag Black Lives Matter,
right?
What do you think are the narratives coming out of that?
That's why the first Black Lives Matter movement didn't get the traction that it should have gotten when it started, because people got lulled into this false sense of security of a post-racial society. Basically, it's more like, we're just going to be blind to what's going on because look, there's a Black guy in the White House. Actually, no. Well, a lot of the pushback is the all lives matter thing, which is quite interesting. And the thing, so during the first wave of the Black Lives Matter movement, there was a part of me that I felt like almost died. It was almost as if Black people, people of color, and white people were seeing two totally different things, even though we were seeing the same footage. So you see a cop shooting you see the Black person running and you see the cop shooting him in his back. Well, he was being aggressive. How is he being aggressive if he's running from the cop? What are you seeing that I'm not seeing? Because I ain't seeing what you're seeing. Or we're seeing cops being overly aggressive for no reason. And we're getting the narrative of, well, if they would just, be respectful and obey. Are we seeing and this is due to media narratives. And what I mean by that, especially in the late 80s, early 90s, the narrative around Black people was we were violent, we were drug addicted, we were poor because we wanted to be poor, we only wanted to live on welfare. That's where the whole welfare queen came up, right? These were actual media narratives that has stuck despite the contrary, despite the actual truth.
I have actually read a book about that, believe it or not.
Yeah, I actually remember when Hillary Clinton called Black youth super predators. Like, I actually remember press conference, and that's when they started doing the 3 strikes you're out, which really, really destroyed the Black and brown communities. Not because we were committing more crimes, but because we were being overly policed. And so it's what people don't understand is like what we call racism, which is the root to white supremacy, is actually taught through everything we come in contact with. So if you're watching news as a kid or as a teenager that Black people are dangerous, they're aggressive, they're violent, they only want to steal from you, they only want to live off of the government, then in your mind, when you're actually seeing a cop killing an unarmed Black person, you don't even know it, but you're thinking, oh, they probably deserved it.
It's the unconscious bias, basically, that's coming out of that. Yeah.
Right, and you don't know. So what's happening between the last Black Lives Matter movement, because the last Black Lives Matter movement started with Obama as president, where we kind of, we knew, but a lot of people in America kind of lull themselves into this thought process of, oh, look, we have a Black president, that means we are progressing. Actually, we didn't.
It's like disillusionment.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they're choosing it though, because the actually what was going on is contrary to that delusion, right? And then with this one, because of who we have as president and the anger behind it, people are actually seeing now with the eyes of the people who are going through this process, and they're going, oh, that's, well, and the problem is now they're attaching it to Trump, but actually it's not Trump. It's been going on for, in fact, the first time we saw videotape of cops overly abusing a Black person was Rodney King in 1994. So it's been going and Black people have been screaming. Longer. Yes, Black people have been screaming for quite some time that this has been going on. It's not, and Trump is, yes, he's kind of like a catalyst to kind of get it going, but it's been kind of simmering. And I feel like the reason why we're seeing like this explosion of it as well, because if you remember in the 90s with the Democratic Party, we went through this whole politically correct cycle
Yeah.
where people couldn't openly be racist. And so they got shamed into being quiet. This is why I don't believe shame works, does not work. So, because what happens is people repress it, and then at some point it's going to bubble to the surface. And that's what we're seeing. Again, the media actually has the power to shape our thinking through narratives. Remember that. If you don't remember anything else, they shape your thinking and your attitudes and beliefs through narratives. So if you're not going to get the objective or neutral information, then you're going to have to create it yourself. And what I mean by that is you're going to have to go and look at both sides and then everything else around you, and then come to the conclusion of what is actually true. But that will take work. And I think what happens is a lot of people, we get lazy and we just like being fed versus using the mental capacity that we have. We are very intelligent people. People around the world are very intelligent and are capable of bigger and better things if we want to do it. The problem is a lot of times it's just easier to fall into a polarization within ourselves, and then we create it out here. You know, women versus men.
That's true.
Like the whole, like, think about the feminist movement, right? The first feminist movement was not about women against men at all. The women were marching for what? They were marching for equal rights to vote. To vote, by the way. They weren't saying, oh, we want to go work. They were like, we just want to vote. We want to be able to help, you know, shape policy. That was the first women's rights movement. The second women's rights movement became a polarized movement. It started off as we want to be able to work because we worked during World War II while the men were at war, and we like having that freedom. Therefore, we do not want to go back into just being mothers as a role. We don't want that as just our role. We want to be able to vote. We want to be able to make our own money, create our own credit, get our own homes. That was a really good reason for that. But then it became, because of the media narrative, by the way, it became a polarization of men versus women.
Because what I'm trying to do is see everything from a theoretical standpoint. I've seen too many clips of media nowadays where you go to interview, a journalist goes to interview somebody and they start accusing the person of being wrong in the middle of the interview. And I'm saying, no, that's not how you do it.
It's almost like people are just regurgitating the actual media narratives, but not actually looking at what's actually happening and understanding that the narrative is actually false compared to what's actually happening.
Like when you're going to write an op-ed, you have to consider, am I really trying to convince somebody else what I believe is true? Or am I just trying to create an echo chamber and further the opinion or the beliefs that I'm pushing from the perspective of where I'm standing? And I think some of the most successful op-eds are written with the concession to the opposition, because they actually go into what the opposing point of view is to address the exact negations of whatever it is that they would be saying from that point of view. So
journaling does not imply opinion unless it's your private diary. You get what I mean? So you're journaling what's taken place, and you're supposed to do it from a neutral place. But journalists today, as I like to call them, reporters, because they're not journalists in my opinion, don't have that. They're not, it's like, I call them mouthpieces, really, because they're basically mouthpieces for whatever team they've decided that they are on. So it becomes a very, I know this is very like, see, I'm going to get more heated than Jessica, y'all. I get so irritated, and I really irritate people because I'll be like, oh, really? There's no such thing as true journalism anymore. It's corporate backed. The media is run by corporations who have their own agenda. So of course, if you keep the people divided, speaking of narratives, if you keep the people divided, then they believe in their minds that they're on a team. And in America, we teach people that teams have to have an enemy team, right? There's one team against the other team. And if you are against somebody, then you cannot find a middle ground to come to figure out how to make everything work for all people. And that's the problem that we're running into with these two narratives.
You're not really finding any direct fact-based reporting now. Everything's become practically a blog. What is your advice to anyone listening to this about how to judge the narratives that are being delivered to them in what they're reading, what they're seeing, and in many ways, what news they're experiencing?
So you want to know the answer to something, you got to go and see what's been said.
Yeah.
So my advice, two things: always you get your news from multiple sources, multiple, not just one, multiple. And when I mean multiple, I mean nationally, locally, globally, because there are going to be different narratives in place in all those places. You need to get, multiple sources, because what's been saying locally is not what's being said nationally, and what's been saying nationally is not being said worldwide. And so when you get your information from different places, you'll actually start seeing, actually seeing the narratives that are being put in place. The narrative around America is very different than what we get in actually America. So, so then you can kind of break that, you can kind of break it down and go, oh, okay, this right here is where the truth is. Because usually the truth will probably be across the board, but then it's the stuff that they attach to it that becomes the narrative, right? So then you find the common thread in what you're reading or watching, and then you'll be able to say, oh, okay, that's the common thread, so this must be the fact that they're writing about or talking about. Other thing, always go to the other side. If you plan to, because see, I don't see myself on one side or the other. I will clown you if you're a Democrat. I will clown you if you're a Republican. I will clown you if you're a libertarian. I don't care. I'm gonna clown you. So if you consider yourself a progressive or a liberal, so to speak, then you need to know what's being said on the conservative side about not only conservatives, but about liberals, because then you'll understand why, when you're having conversations with your conservative family members or friends, why they're saying what they're saying, because that's what they've been taught, right? Especially most conservatives only watch Fox News. So now you're just like, well, how did they get that information? Go watch Fox News. And then you'll understand why they think the way they do. And if it's incorrect, then you're able to break that information down to them and feed it to them in the way that they need to hear it. If you're conservative or you consider yourself conservative, you need to be watching MSNBC, honestly. CNN calls itself neutral, but it's kind of leaning more on the conservative side, by the way. So you can understand what's going on in the world and why people are viewing things from a different place, or why people are getting angry, because you're getting two different news, you're getting two different information streams, and you've been taught one thing on this end and one thing on this end, and so you're bumping heads and fighting against each other, when you don't understand that actually what you're fighting for, you actually want the same things, but you've been told that you don't.
The cognitive dissonance, I think, is confusing a lot of people around what they think they want. But you're right. I mean, most people want equality, prosperity, the ability to participate in a democracy. I think most Americans want that at their core. That's the rights we were promised when we were born. But I think exactly what you were saying, that narrative has started to confuse people a lot, and it's pitted people against one another. So the hashtag that accompanies Wisdom Wednesday is Information Allies. And the purpose of that is I use the term ally because an ally is, you're not necessarily 100% agreeing with everything, but you're agreeing to try to agree as best as possible when you're an ally to something, is the way I see it. And you're also connected to like-minded people that care about the same cause. So in the spirit of hashtag Information Allies, how can anybody listening to this be a better information ally?
It still goes back to making sure you're reading and listening to the other side with an open mind. Yes, you've been taught a certain way, you've been trained to be a certain way, but what if what you're hearing is not correct, or has been shaped in a way that takes a lot of the truth out of it, which is false, right? So you have to always, I guess the best thing I would say is question everything you hear.
Mm-hmm.
Question it.
Mm-hmm.
Do not just blindly follow it. Around the world, most media is ran by the state.
That's exactly what you and I had a conversation about on your blog, on your podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have told people that too. I said, you don't realize how fortunate we are that we have a First Amendment that encourages a fourth estate.
Yeah.
Many countries around the world cannot report anything critical on the government. This is why we have the Committee to Protect Journalists, and why we have media organizations that, NGOs that are for the sole purpose of getting journalists out of prison globally for reporting against the government, criticizing the government. We have opportunity in the United States to do these things that so many other nations don't. And that's why building a more responsible information culture is so important.
If you guys want there to be a responsible journalism in America, and you do not want to fall into a place where our journalism, or we lose our fourth estate, which is very important in our society. By the way, it's been eroded to almost nothing. And I know maybe we don't want to believe that, but it has. Then you're going to have to be active. Allyship means activate. You don't have an ally. This is the funny thing. An ally fights alongside you, which also means that there's a fight to be fought. Okay, so you're going to have to be more determined to make sure that your media doesn't go into the way that the rest of the world is. That means writing the news if you feel like they're reporting something falsely, or it's an opinion piece that just does not go well with you. Other thing we would do is we started writing the advertisers for those programs, and was like, this is what they said, this is the facts, we don't like it, we're going to boycott your products until you put pressure on them to say what is actually correct. I know, and it sounds like it's a lot, but it actually isn't. It takes 10 minutes of your time to send an email. And so a lot of people, especially in the United States, respond to money more than they respond to anything else. And if you have a wave of people complaining about stuff, they will listen. The reason why Fox News and MSNBC and CNN are able to do what they do is because not enough pushback is happening. So if you're going to be an ally, and if you're going to be someone who wants the fourth estate to stay neutral, then you both are going to have to get together, find the common ground. I promise you, you have more in common than you do not. And then fight for that. Stand on that first. And, demand that you have a more neutral, more objective news and information.
That's what we're asking everybody to do. Our joint call today is for everybody to say, I want to commit to having a better information climate, not only in the United States, but globally. A lot of other countries will, at least they did, look up to the United States in many ways, or have reverence for the things that we do. And part of that is our democracy and our Constitution. And I think all of us can live true to that by committing to asking for a better information climate. Thank you for joining me for Wisdom Wednesday. I look forward to talking to you guys again next week with another interesting information theory concept. Take care, everyone.